students are. So this is Dalhousie's gesture back to the world that we want to bring. And hopefully in the question period we'll. So two things I want to. First thing is, because this is, are talking about to just recognize that we are here. No, on Treaty Day is not. The second thing I wanted to mention in connection with that is that this is festival or part. There's a very big set of on the commons and around the commons. Live as part of a democratic society. That's by way of a general introduction. If we could make sure that there's a route, so single line if you're in, just down one side. Otherwise the so it's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Gordon McHewett. Gordon is lots of people to we also have to thank
no.
other partners that are involved in this project. Also mentioned that the Friends hurricane free, which means that you will enjoy the sun down on the commons for days. Nova Scotia Institute for Science has supported this. Dalhousie Philosophy Department, which the King's College all kinds of stuff. Tomorrow. Philip Kitcher. Now, we all know Philip Kitcher. Eyes of the audience, Philip Kitcher burst upon the scene, philosopher of mathematics, but that didn't constrain him. If there's any issue in philosophy, Philip Kitcher has very sensitive, whether fighting creationism, book abuse science, taking on the genetic, or even Joyce and Wagner. He's written. Philip Kitcher has written the key text all of us philosophers must engage if we're. Lately, he has turned to issues of democracy, idea of race, of ethics, pragmatism, and produced a series of topics. Today, we'll engage two of them: democracy
Well, thank you very much, Gordon. I shall try to make this lively. There are many of you out here, and I would like it to be a lively occasion for you. And I look forward, as Steve said at the beginning, learning from you in the question period. So let me begin in the way that philosophers sometimes begin, with a very old philosopher, Plato. If Plato came back today, he would probably say, "I told you so. I told you you shouldn't have this democracy thing. I told you how people should be governed. What you need are wise and good rulers." And it's a consequence of my theory that if they're genuinely wise, they will also be genuinely good. You people who like democracy think you're going to get freedom. But the freedom you have really isn't worth having if it's compromised by your complete ignorance, inability to think issues through, so that you make a total mess of things. Now, Plato was a real elitist. He thought that people differed in their native intelligence. He thought people differed in their capacity for wisdom. I don't think that. But Plato was surely right about one thing, that sometimes people don't know. Sometimes what they don't know really hurt them. That's why he insisted on the role of experts in leading political life. Now, what do the experts say about our planet, its mean temperature? I'm sure most of you know this, but I want to build on a shared body of understanding. The experts believe that whatever is done now, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to prevent the mean global temperature rising by 2 degrees Celsius. Maybe the latest IPCC report is a little bit more optimistic, that we might get away with 1.575. Probabilities are low. And if we do nothing at all, if we show no interest whatsoever in climate change, the likely increase global mean temperature. Now let's be clear about what that is. Average temperature across the Earth's surface will rise between 3 degrees and 7 degrees. And I want to put that 7-degree figure in context. The last time the Earth's global mean temperature was 6 degrees hotter than it was when these. There was no ice anywhere. There were swamps very close to both the poles. The last time the Earth was 6 degrees lower, not only this region, but most of the continental states was under ice sheets, as was most of Europe too. So we're talking about very large temperature swings that are possible if we do nothing at all. Now, climate scientists have been working on this problem and trying to communicate it to the general public for 30 plus years. And out of their attempts to measure past temperatures and trace the ways in which the Earth's mean over time has come this famous graph, the hockey stick. You all know what hockey stick is. That term was coined by Michael Mann, a climatologist who suffered for his work in this area. He was sued by the Attorney General of the state of Virginia. Persecution goes on a lot when climate science. And it shows a rapid general uprise in the Earth's mean temperature since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Now, for the experts, it's not only uncontroversial that this is happening, but also uncontroversial that we are causing it. The lack of controversy rests on something very simple. There's a fine-grained correlation between greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, concentrations of them over time, and the Earth's mean temperature. But correlation, as you all know, isn't causation. On the other hand, know various mechanisms that produce Earth's mean temperature. And climatologists systematically investigate those and see whether they can account for that warming. And the greenhouse mechanism, which has been known essentially since the 19th, the greenhouse mechanism account for this correlation. No other known mechanism. That's why everybody is so convinced about anthropogenic warming. And then they go on from there to try to estimate the probabilities of the size of the increase for the next century. And if you Google global gamble, you will find this picture, and it's a pair of roulette wheels. You can play with it. You can see what happens. Roll the dice, spin the roulette wheel, see what you get. You'll get, if you do it several times, you'll get a series of possibilities for the Earth's future. Now, what does that mean? The most obvious way in which rising temperature relates into things that affect our species, human beings, is in a rise in sea level. And so there are other great sites on the internet where you can play around with looking at what the world will look like if the seas rise by 1 meter. However, this is what happens to Miami. Miami is by no means unique. There are lots and lots of bits of the American coastline that are very vulnerable to inundation. Lots of the coastline of Asia, Bay of Bengal, for example. Lots of islands like the Maldives, which will go under. And lots of bits of North Africa, for example, Egypt. So there are lots of places at which rising sea levels will cause problems for human beings, given where we now live. But it's wrong, actually, to focus on mean sea level rise, mean temperature.
Oh, joli.
Things happen away from the mean. We get storms, we get violent events. In those violent events, you get much larger fluctuations. So what happens if the temperature rises? Well, a distribution of events gets shifted. Mean goes in that picture. Your right. You get more hot weather, more record hot weather. And if, as some climate scientists believe, global warming is also associated with greater variance, that is, it's as if a hand came down on the top of the bell curve and sort of flattened it a bit, so you got fatter tails, then you get even more extreme events. And if, as they believe, the effect of global warming is to slant the precipitation